Hello everyone, welcome to another YouTube video of mine. Today's YouTube video is actually 10 strange rulings in Islam explained, and it's actually replied to Abdullah Samir. Now first I need to explain to you everyone the meaning of the word strange. Strange is a word used if other people are not doing something the same as yourself or similar. If everyone else is doing something different, completely different to what you're doing, then we can say it's strange. Let's suppose, for example, everyone in a party is wearing black clothes and I come with white clothes. That's when it's strange. But if everyone is wearing black and I attend that party wearing the same black clothes, then it's not strange. So let me reply to number one. Number one, he said, breast milk makes you related. Out of the 10 strange rulings, so he said number one is breast milk makes you related. Now, how can you call this strange? Maybe there is, let's say for example, some sort of chemical information or genetic material that makes you related in ways that science has not yet discovered today. That's the answer to number one. Number two is the existence of black magic. That is mentioned in the Bible as well. Right now at this moment you must be seeing a verse in the Bible which talks about black magic, and after that I would also show that verse that talks about black magic in the Quran. Both of those religions actually go against it, and I'm also mentioning the verse that is of the Holy Quran which actually goes against it, and there is no verse in the Holy Quran which is in favor of black magic either. Number three is adopted children do not get family name. Now this number three has confused me in regards to Abdullah Samir himself. First you talk about one, and how is it possible that after breastfeeding children get somehow related, and now number three you have an objection, why don't adopted children can't get related and can't get a family name. So one person sounds really, Abdullah Samir, you sound very confused to me, but still I would answer you. In what sense should adopted children get your family name? For example, are they related to you by flesh, blood, or for example, did you breastfeed that child? What have you done? That person gets a family name. I mean, of course, people adopt children because they want. I mean, if somebody adopts a child, gives him or her love or a place to stay, that's more than enough. But getting a family name means, giving property rights. I mean, you can give property rights anyway. But let's suppose, for example, I have children and I adopt another set of children. So that adopted child would get property rights of my own children. So that would, if for example, if you're adopting children, you might do it out of sympathy, and you might give them love, and you might give them a place to stay. But people at times don't necessarily give adopted children the same love that they might give to their own children. There are people who have their own children but they still adopt children. So and that would cause big major arguments with real genuine children and those that are adopted. So that one of the reasons I could see is to avoid arguments between the actual children and the adopted children. And generally speaking, it's quite more than enough if somebody is homeless or without parents and you adopt children and you give them a place to stay and food to mouth. That sounds quite enough, more than enough to me. The fourth one is relating to divorce. That if you divorce a woman 3 times, after which she would, if you want to reunite with her, she would have to remarry in order for them to actually reunite. I mean, the reason why this concept was actually brought forward is so that you just don't treat marriage as a game. Of course, divorce is made easier. It's actually far easier in Islam than it is most probably in any other way, because even divorce is given by word of mouth. It's just as simple as that. For example, I mean, I've known people who are trying to get divorced for the past 4 years, and the process gets, if you speak legally, it would take almost like forever. So that it gives people a sense of freedom. Divorce is made easy so that people who are in uncomfortable relationships, they could actually remarry and start life again. So it's absolutely reasonable to not drag a marriage or a relationship which is not working, which is why divorce is made easy. But Allah also knew and fully understood one thing very clearly, is that if divorce was made easy, people may just do it out of ease because it's so easy. So just to avoid that, Allah had to make a barrier of just, of 3. And, there are people who are confused. They marry, divorce the same person, and then think about remarrying the person, and then divorcing again, and then marrying again, and divorcing again. That such people are those people who are playing around with the whole idea of getting married. So these type of people are playing, just like, merry-go-round in the whole idea of getting married. So to avoid making marriage into a joke, or treating marriage, the whole idea of getting married as a joke, is that there is a barrier of 3 mistakes. But Allah even still gave an opportunity to those people too, by saying, look, if after 3 times she would have to just remarry, and then you can think about reuniting, just so that you know that divorcing that woman is a serious issue, and so that you can get, to avoid, would you be able to tolerate the woman that you love if she married someone else? Would you be able to tolerate that? So, for example, when you divorce a woman for the 3rd time, or you decide to divorce a woman for the 3rd time, you should actually be wary about that in your mind, to avoid treating marriage as a joke. There could not be any other way to disgust a man, or disgust a person who's treating a woman as a joke, or considering a marriage as a joke. So number 5 is no fighting in the sacred months. Now, the most sacred month is the month of Ramadan. Now, generally speaking, is that by saying that does not mean that Islam is saying fight during the other months. No, it just means to actually respect those sacred months in such a way, those people that prioritize religion would actually put religion above everything, above hatred, above enmity, above all of that. Religion and love and prioritizing religion is above that. That is why. So the idea is, during the month of Ramadan, for example, it's a month where you actually reflect on your deeds, good deeds or bad deeds. So those deeds which are good, you can enhance them, and those deeds that are in you, negative qualities that are in you, you can actually reflect on them and try to improve on them and work on them. So, for example, if there's 2 parties that are fighting with one another during the month of Ramadan, because of fasting and reflecting on religion, reflecting on themselves, maybe they might learn to forgive each other and actually work on the differences for the sake of religion, for the sake of Islam, that they can actually work on the differences and make the situation better. So Ramadan is actually an opportunity where peace can be brought forward if it's not there in advance or was not there before. So that is the concept, is actually respecting religion above other things, and also that there is a chance of reflecting on yourself, and maybe that things could be solved without fighting. So that is the reason. Number 6 is that the prayer for getting a new wife and a new animal is the same. What is wrong with that? When people pray for something, a new decision, that decision could be anything. The decision could be getting married, getting a job, buying a car. Or back in those days, people would buy an animal, in most of the cases, because it was a method of transport. Most of the cases it was that. So even in today's terms, if people buy a car or they get married or whatever decision you're making or adopting a slave, you pray that such and such decision is good for me. If, for example, you're getting married, you say to Allah, that Allah, may this decision be good for me. If you're finding a job or going for a job, or you get a job, you say, may Allah, this decision or this job shows the best out of me. May this be beneficial for me. What is wrong with that? If you buy an animal, back in those days people bought animals because it was a method of transport. It's the same as buying a new car. You would say, may this car be good for me, that decision be good for me, may that decision be beneficial for me, or may I make the best out of this decision. What's wrong with that? I mean, be it when you adopt a slave or adopt an animal or you adopt children, you want the best out of your decision. Number 7 is wiping XYZ. I'm just changing that word so that people could just kind of understand. Wiping XYZ with an odd number of stones. So whatever process of cleansing or whichever ritual it is, it requires a number. In most of the cases, even when you baptize, for example, you have to sprinkle water 3 times on the head. What is wrong with that? There has to be a limit. I mean, of course, now even baptism requires an odd number of times to baptize. When we sprinkle water on someone's head during the process of baptizing, the number is 3. And usually purification processes or rituals have a certain number of time to do that. That's not strange, because you use the word strange like rituals, and rituals have quantities. Every ritual of purification, baptism, has a number to it. I mean, what would happen if people sprinkled water over the head for an hour? I mean, that would just consume time. So everything has been given, in most of the cases, in most rituals that you know, in other religions too, there is a certain number to it, that you have to do such and such this number of times. This is not unheard of. So in what ways is that strange? Number 8 goes, men cannot wear gold or silk, that sort of one. And he also mentioned about wearing gold and silk is haram for men. Well, the reason is because that in Islam, cross-dressing is prohibited. You'll be thinking, what has cross-dressing got to do with a man wearing gold or silk? So I'm just showing you an image of Bruno Mars, and you just see this image. If you notice that the wearing of gold on Bruno Mars actually seems kind of feminine, even silk. Now, wearing of silk and gold when it comes to men, not women, men, it just shows extravagance, and it is also feminine. So it's a sign of extravagance, and it's also a sign of something which is rather feminine. And as you can see, who is a better example I can at the moment think of than Bruno Mars? And look at his image. He looks rather feminine, wearing that gold and wearing that silk. It looks very feminine to the eye, and Islam prohibits that. And look at this image of a Saudi Arabian gentleman and his clothes. Just imagine if these clothes were actually made of silk. It would make him look very, very, very feminine indeed. On number number 9, Abdullah Samir mentioned, imitating non-Muslims is haram. Now, what is wrong with that? Now, for example, when it comes to Islam and our religion, is that although those things that are prohibited in Islam, such as have a relationship outside of marriage, that is also is considered a sin. In the Bible, having a relationship between men and women outside the marital circle is considered a sin. It's in both the religions, in the Bible and in the Holy Quran, in both the religion. Homosexuality in both the religion, Islam and Christianity, and there are other religions which which are not in favor of homosexuality. And for example, these are of course, the concept of covering head is also in the Quran and in the Bible. But the major difference between the Muslims is that Muslims actually follow their religion very, very closely as compared to the other religions that I've noticed, whether it's Christianity, Catholic faith, and the other religions that I'm noticing, that although Christianity is similar to Islam and of course, and Judaism also, but I have noticed that the Muslims are following their religion much more closely than any other similar religion to Islam. And so one of the things is that if I imitate non-Muslims, because the non-Muslims are not really following their religion, and they're not, and you can clearly see that. So if I imitate non-Muslims, I would actually end up doing those things which are haram. For example, I would consider it okay to have a boyfriend and live in relationship with him. Other things such as drinking alcohol, for example. I would end up drinking alcohol, I would start to live my life like a complete non-Muslim, then I'll end up doing sins like them also. So what is wrong with that? As you can clearly see, that in majority of the cases, the non-Muslims are doing those things which are completely against Islam. So if I go against Islam, then I would actually not be considered as righteous Muslim. What is wrong with that? On number 10, he actually talks about wearing fabric or clothes which touch the ground and go beyond the ankle. Now, back in those days, at the time of the Prophet era, it wasn't really a time where people actually wore trousers. Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, may peace be upon him, and even Jesus Christ actually did wear very same or similar clothing to one another. So those clothing which was actually, if that clothing that they wore became longer than it was, I'm going to show you an image, and you could actually see it right now, that this is an image of a lady, a famous celebrity, actually wearing an extremely long dress. Now, as you can see, that sort of dress, which goes beyond the ankles and touches the ground, is actually representing pride and arrogance. If you look at it very carefully, that it's a representation of pride and arrogance, that type of clothing, which goes beyond the ankles and touches the ground in such sort of way. So any representation of high level of wealth, or a representation of high position and status is actually considered as pride and arrogance in Islam, and it's not appreciated at all. So I hope that my replies get understood. Now, Islam talks about such people in Surah 62 verse number 5, that's Surah Jummah, that Islam has actually correlated some people with a donkey. And why I say this, it says a donkey could actually carry volumes of literature but never really read it. It means that the donkey could actually carry literature on its back but not read it. Means that some people just you could have the book in front of them, but they don't really understand. Now, by actually waving a flag, I think it's complete stupidity to actually, if for example you leave Islam, and on those terms and conditions, or those things that you don't find sensible, and suppose you give that reason, somebody who has more knowledge than you and better understanding than you, then you would actually make a fool out of yourself right in front of them. So I would say that it just shows that by telling the world that you've left the religion, you're just showing your lack of understanding and your lack of knowledge in one go. And that's the first thing. And a lack of ability to actually think things through. And next thing is, some people just don't have that ability to, think or even question others. Some people just need an excuse to become an atheist. And they just have to give these excuses that this sounds odd, that sounds strange, and these are the reasons why we are just not following our religion, because we think this and that is odd. Because these people and such people that walk out of religion, they just want to live a free life. They just want to live a life how they seem is right. Some people like to cherry pick rules and regulations. They just cherry pick what they want to pick and what they don't want. They just leave what they don't want to pick. So they live life like cherry picking. Rules and regulations, we just adapt what we want to adapt and leave what we want to leave. And sometimes it's because sometimes I have noticed people walk out of religion because they fell in love with a non-Muslim. Some people, they fall in love with non-Muslims. So first they try to tell that non-Muslim person to actually adopt their religion. Later, they fully decide that they would rather, when things don't work, they just walk out of religion, giving 10 excuses to the world. And they try to, what they want to do, there's one of the reasons why people make such videos, is they just want to just justify their own action. Maybe they've married outside of their religion and they just want to justify their action by pretending to be smart. And the reality is that they've never really understood their religion in the first place. I mean, by just mentioning these things, it just clearly shows lack of knowledge and lack of understanding anyway. So that's that. Even people not like Nabil Qureshi are in the same boat, same situation. They just don't know their own religion in the first place. Some people are following their religion only because their parents told them to do that. And so that in that situation, they're just following it robotically. They don't really know what they're following. Suddenly they meet somebody who brings questions up and they feel, hey, I think I'm doing something just mindlessly. Yes, until then, some people are following religious in a mindless way. It is better if they come up with someone who has knowledge to actually seek knowledge. Seek knowledge. Some people need to actually follow and study their religion if some people follow their parents just because their parents told them to. It's always good and much more intellectual to actually study and research whether what our parents are telling is right or wrong. And if so that somebody who comes across us, we can give them an answer ourselves and we don't look ignorant before them. So they choose to leave Islam. Either they choose to leave Islam because they didn't know what it was in the first place, and they were just robotically doing it, and they was just mentally annoyed of being, playing robot, so they decided to leave it. Instead of researching it, they just decided to leave it. That's one thing. And a second thing is that they wanted to live their own life, and they just didn't really believe in the hereafter anyway. So that's that. I think I've answered the question, and